Uganda's public debt sustainable? That is a question that will be answered today by students of Ankole Western University. Welcome to the Inter-University Debate, which is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for this talk show. My name is Fancy Jendalake. I'm an advocate and a tax consultant. Today, as mentioned, we are hosting students of Ankole Western University. You're welcome to the Inter-University Debate.
Thank you.
So we are looking at the public debt of Uganda. According to the budget that was read for 2022-2023, which was read on 14th of June, Uganda's public debt stands at 73 trillion Uganda shillings. Now, this is more than the budget for 2022-2023, which is at 48,000 billion Uganda shillings. Now, we sit and look at this. Recently, the Bank of Uganda released its report, and it states that Uganda's public debt has actually increased to 78 trillion Uganda shillings. Now, the BOU clearly stated in its report that Uganda borrows majorly externally. External borrowing stands at 62% of the borrowings of Uganda. Now, this means Uganda majorly borrows externally from organizations like World Bank, IMF, and other organizations externally. And then internal borrowing covers the percentage that is remaining. However, the BOU also stated that Uganda's internal borrowing has also increased, even when the percentage does not exceed that of external borrowing. So today, students of Ankole Western University are going to digest that topic and look at, can we sustain this public debt that has been growing? Let me introduce the panelists for today's discussion. I'll start with the gentleman that is seated right next to me, and that is Mr. Atwongire Adroit. Adroit is pursuing a diploma in information technology. You're welcome to the Inter-University Debate.
Thank you.
Okay, our next panelist is Ms. Kemigisha Sarah. Sarah is also pursuing a diploma in information technology. You're welcome to the debate.
Thank you, Fancy.
Okay, our third panelist is Mr. Atwiine Lauben, who is pursuing Bachelor of Social Work and Social Administration. Lauben, you're welcome to the debate.
Thank you, Madam Fancy.
Okay, our fourth panelist is a familiar face to the Inter-University Debate. She also represented her university in the previous session that we had. That was the previous season. So, and that is Ms. Orikiriza Adellah. Adellah, you're welcome back to the debate.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so as I introduced, we are looking at the state of Uganda's public debt. And I know you have looked at the different reports that have been released. We had the budgets that came out 2022-2023, as I referenced. We have seen the IMF report, the World Bank report, the Bank of Uganda report. All these point towards Uganda's growth in public debt. Now, the first question that I will pose to the first panelist, and that is Adroit, is update us on the current status. We sit today in January 2023. What is the status generally of Uganda's public debt?
Thank you, Madam, for this chance you have given me. I'm called Atwongire Adroit from Ankole Western University, pursuing a diploma in information technology. Back to your question, enlightening you about the Uganda's debt per now. Uganda has a debt that is currently 73 point something trillions per now. And this debt, it is currently like that because it raised in a year of 2021-2022 financial year, where I think we are affected by COVID and other circumstances. And this burden or debt is increased due to the budget of the current year we are in. That is the budget where they raised the amount of 48,000 billions, which can't be collected from our taxes and the resources we are having in Uganda. So that's where our debt is, and that's where Uganda is per now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me move to Sarah. So, Sarah, we have heard of the current status from Adroit. Now, something that he pointed out, which also came out during the budget speech, is the issue of COVID-19. Now, my question to you is, to what extent did COVID-19, in your own perspective, contribute to the increment of Uganda's debt?
To point your question, COVID-19, to a larger extent, has increased the debt of our country. Why? This is because our country, to some extent, it is not prepared, like it was not prepared for that circumstance of COVID-19. It was not ready for it, and as a poor country or a developing country, there is a way it affected it. In some countries, you have to be prepared, like to prepare some emergency money for something, some illness. You never know what is coming tomorrow. But our country, on that part, it was not prepared at all. It didn't know about COVID-19, so out of the blue, COVID-19 came. So now that money that was needed to cover the sickness, to cover the people that were affected, it was all needed to be borrowed from the international banks, outside rich people who can sustain the country. That's how COVID-19 brought that big debt to our country, because they needed a lot of money to sustain the people, to maintain or mitigate other circumstances from COVID-19. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sarah. Before I move to the next panelist, let me just ask you something else on that. So, your discussion states to a greater extent COVID-19 increased the debt.
Yes.
Now, my question is, in your own perspective, do you think our debt would not be on the increment if COVID-19 had not happened?
If COVID-19 had not happened, to my perspective, still the debt would increase, but to a small extent. Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. So let me move to the third panelist, and that is Lauben. So Lauben, Sarah has talked about COVID-19. So what are some of the other reasons, she said, to a larger extent? So the other extent, what are some of the reasons why our debt has been skyrocketing?
Well, thank you, Madam Fancy. I want to thank you and the entire Centers for Constitutional Governance for bringing up such an initiative where university students come and discuss issues that affect our country. Because if we don't do, then the country has no direction. Because it is the discussions here that shape the destiny of our country. Now, to the question you've raised, one, I agree with Sarah that COVID-19 did more of harm because it was unprecedented. The country had not prepared for it. No budget was put aside to cater for it because we never knew it was coming up. And you see, it brought the hair down. The whole country closed. Business closed, everything. And expenditure continued. So the country had to make sure people are protected. They had to borrow. Now, remember, the budget had already been made. We were almost in the second quarter. We were finishing the third quarter of the 2019-2020 financial year. So the country had no money. So it was right that the country borrows to finance all that was needed, medicines, and so on and so forth, providing food for the people, and all that we saw. But regardless of COVID-19, Previously, we had been borrowing. So borrowing is as old as when the country began, when the country was created, when mankind was created. Because, as you know, Uganda is a developing country. It means we don't have enough to sustain us. So we spend our lives on other people's money. The country must borrow to make roads, to make all the infrastructure, to make sure that when we go to Mulago, we find some medicine. But anyway, before we go there, it must have already been constructed. The country does not have that money to construct such, because we would be getting money from taxes, which our taxes are very low. They cannot raise such money that is needed. So we've been borrowing before. And even if COVID did not come, we would still be borrowing to finance all those projects that the government had planned to finance. We had to construct the roads, we had to construct hospitals. I think in that budget there was the standard gauge railway that the country, the government wanted to revive, and all other projects. So we would still be borrowing to finance all those projects, even if COVID did not come up. Madam Nancy. Fancy rather.
Okay, thank you so much, Lauben. Let me move to Adellah. So we have had the discussion around why has our public debt been skyrocketing. Now, my question is, comparing Uganda internationally, how are we faring in terms of the debt burden?
Thank you, Madam Fancy. Still Adellah from Ankole Western University, Bachelors of Public Admin and Management. Back to your question, if we can compare our country to other countries internationally, our country is a developing country. It has no money. And in most cases, we have seen developed countries helping developing countries. This is where our country lacks a lot of, I may say, money or equipment to make it a developed country. For example, if I can hint about the COVID-19 that they have been speaking about, we saw that the government had to get some of the help from other countries, like the medicine, because its people, its citizens, they were all dying because of such a circumstance. Therefore, the country had to look for any term or other terms so that they can borrow that money to help the country. And this is whereby this Uganda can't sustain a debt. It is sustainable because it will remain on such a level where you can't, or we as Ugandans, we as a country, we can't pay that debt to some extent. It will grow, but then we people, citizens, we are not adhering to what the government wants. We are not paying taxes, and we can't be told that we should pay taxes. We can't pay, and if we are told to pay taxes, then we are going to fight against that program maybe. So that means the government will keep in that line of borrowing, of getting help from other countries, but then I think it is not all that it should be helpful, that other countries can help our country sustain this debt on a certain level. But to me as a person and other people that I have said, to my colleagues, our country is a poor country. We are poor. So I don't think that we are, yes, we want to head somewhere, but then the people that are leading us also, they are not making us, they are not leading us a straight line. So that's why we are all almost facing this debt every time, even every single minute that we add, or every hour that we add, we are going to be facing the debt. So you're not going to pay the debt so that maybe to the normal line, to the finished line. We will be in this line of debts until we become a developed country. Thank you, Madam Fancy.
Excuse me,
May I
Madam
say
Fancy.
something, Madam
Yes.
Nancy?
I would like to disagree.
Let me start with Sarah, because I have like 2 questions for Adela from her
Yes,
discussion. But before I even pose the 2 questions, let me first come back to Sarah.
Okay, I would like to disagree with Adela on two issues or 2 statements she made. She said, you said, no, okay, I've forgotten what you said exactly, but at least the question was posing like how we are faring with our debts, how Uganda is faring. And when you search, Uganda is even not in the top 20 most countries that have debts. So you see that we are not even in a bad state of debts. Only that, you also pointed out that we don't pay taxes. Me, I guess that why that debt is increasing on the point of taxes is only because we people pay taxes, but the people who collect those taxes, you might find even they don't report that we pay that tax. You pay tax over a year, but it has not even reached in the state that we have paid taxes, and they only keep bragging around that we people don't do what? Don't pay taxes. Yes.
Okay, let me
but
move
you
to
pay,
Lauben.
we pay little. It can't be enough.
Thank you,
Let
Madam
me move to
Fancy. Let me make this
to
case.
Lauben.
One, I wouldn't agree with my sister there, that we are so poor. We are not so poor.
Yes, we are
We may
not.
be not doing well, but we are not so poor. Because there are other countries which are very poor. And like Sarah said, we are not in the first. We don't top the list of people who are of
Highly
the countries that
indebted.
are so
I think
indebted.
the first country must be Japan.
The
right?
first country
Yeah, it
is
is.
Japan.
Yes, with the
There
most
is
debt.
there is also Greece following in, and Italy, and so on and so forth. And Japan is one of the most developed countries, but it has such huge debts. You find it in the first position of countries that have the biggest debts. So even in Africa, Uganda is not the first. We have countries like Angola, we have countries like Djibouti, we have countries like Rwanda, which are more indebted than Uganda. So I would say that we have a huge debt. It's fine compared to our GDP. The debt is huge, but we are not doing so bad compared to
Other
other
countries.
So
countries.
should we add on the debt so that we can become a developed country?
So long as we can be able to
Sustain it.
sustain our debt.
Okay, yes. So back to Adela. Here
Yes,
comes
please.
my questions.
Mm.
So my first question to you came from your discussion on the fact that Uganda is a very poor country, so we have got to, borrow and cover up. And then the second issue is on the perspective of citizens. Let me start with the second issue. So in your own perspective, do you think the biggest contributory factor to the debt increment are the citizens?
Okay, thank you, Madam Nancy. To that question, I don't think the citizens are the biggest factor on that debt. No, but to some extent, they contribute. They contribute much. They contribute something that can make a country move on. Because we have seen in long years ago, people were running because of taxes. You could not tell a parent to pay tax when the kid is not studying. But then those taxes, if they were paid by that time, then we would be in some movement. I think we should be in this line where Uganda is not on this stage of being developed. We should somewhere ahead. I think taxes, like she said, taxes are being paid, but then the way they are being utilized, it is not the way that they should be.
Okay.
If these people, maybe who are receiving those taxes, are utilizing those taxes in such a way that can make a country move to some extent, then we would be better as a country. But now the citizens are paying, but the taxes are being smuggled by these people. I don't know. I'm not going to mention because I don't know those people. But then,
URA?
yes,
They are the
URA.
tax collectors.
Yeah, they are. I know they are. It is the URA, but you know, it is an organization. So that organization is made by people. So those people, they should be taking our tax somewhere else. Because if it was used in a right way, then this at least this country it would be somewhere better, not at this level.
Okay, then let me ask my second question from your discussion. Then I move this side. So my second question is, it comes from the issue of development, being a poor country. My question is, do you think Uganda borrows because it's a poor country?
Okay, thank you, Fancy. To some extent, it borrows because it can't manage. And on another extent, it borrows because it wants to give what its citizens want. It wants to give help to its people. Like if we go back to this situation of COVID, Uganda had to get some help from other countries because it never wanted its people. It never wanted to see its people like, dying, because it was also making a loss. Now, if a country has no people, of course you make a big loss. So you can't stand there and you see your people suffering, dying every time. That is a big loss, family. So that is where the government has had to seek some help from other countries so it can make its citizens better than they were because of the situation that we were in.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me move back to Adroit.
Yes.
So let's bring the statistics. Let's forget about the entire international world. Let's come to East Africa. Now, the East African community is made up of 7 countries.
Yes.
Somalia is creeping in to join. Whether they join, it's a question for a different day. Now, how is Uganda faring within the EAC in terms of the debt burden?
To that question, Uganda, as they earlier said, that it is not badly dated, it has at least grown to a such extent like it is somehow better to other countries. As the president said one time, like Uganda is in middle state of the middle state of as it is growing.
President
So,
said we are in middle income.
yeah, middle income state. So Uganda is somehow at least, but as it is getting dated year by year, the problem is coming from the way it uses its money. There is money which is used, I think, in a way like it's not the way it should be used. Like the money they use when
MPs.
Giving money or paying salaries to MPs. That money is a lot of money. And remember, we are having many MPs by now. Even the parliament is full. Then from the salaries and the allowances they give to them, Addellah is giving them cars even. Some of the MPs have been driving. I don't see the reason why they should be given such expensive cars and which are bought from abroad. That is the second problem. The other problem to why Uganda is in debts by now, the way it uses its money. They borrow some money from other countries, and you find like that money is not used the way they wanted it to be used. Some is taken by the great people of the government. Some is used for its purpose. So you find like even the things they are doing, they are not good compared to the money they borrowed. Thank you.
So that is corruption. Yes.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so let me move to Sarah.
Yes.
So I'll ask you on something that Adroit had already hinted on, the issue of how Uganda spends money. What is your perspective on how Uganda spends public debt?
Thank you, Madam Fancy. According to me, I see that the government to some extent spends vigorantly. There is a way now, for example, according to what Adroit said, like buying cars. The ministers are the same as us citizens. You find me a citizen, I'm doing a small job, I keep my money. When the money is up big, I buy a car. But the ministers, they are paid salaries, they are paid allowances. That person cannot use that money to buy his own car in his own salary or allowance, but the government has to cater for those cars, those bicycles for chairpersons, those motorcycles for what and what. I think that is extraordinary, as in spending vigorantly. Instead of using that money, actually, you might find even that money is borrowed and they are buying cars for those ministers. Instead of borrowing now money to do something which is helpful, now they are buying money for the ministers. I think there is a way they are spending it in a way which is not right, to my perspective.
Okay, so Sarah, in your own perspective, what are the priority areas that you think Uganda should focus on when they borrow?
To my perspective, some areas that should be focused on, first of all, at least the youth, the citizens, find areas where they can build industries to cater for jobs, increase technology because we are growing digitally. They find technology activities which can help us. Like you find we are making our own aeroplane, developing such things, but not buying for MPs cars. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me move to Lauben. So Lauben, we have been borrowing. It's something that you hinted on earlier. Japan is number 1 on the list, highly indebted. It's a developed country. Our debt burden has been increasing. We are a developing country. At some point, the president said we have reached middle income status. I think you saw the wharf at which every single person came at the president, including the World Bank, came out to say no, Uganda is not yet a middle income status. So my question to you is, we have been borrowing. Why haven't we been able to meet our targets, especially reaching the middle income status?
Thank you for that question, Madam Fancy. I want to first react to a few things and then I come to the question.
Yes, please do.
One, I want to say that I heard Adela talk about the taxes. That now, how much do we collect in taxes? And how much is our budget? Because the taxes we collect, so they cannot finance our budget. And therefore, that is how we have to opt to borrow from friends so that we can be able to finance our budget. Two, I want to make a case with Sarah's submission. Like when you're a servant of the government, honestly, you need to be facilitated. We are citizens, they are citizens like us. But then, there is something they are doing that we are not doing. There is service that they are providing to the country that us ordinary citizens are not providing. So it is right that the government must facilitate them. And it is constitutional to facilitate the MPs and the ministers and all other government employees. But I'm always against the sentiment that MPs are given vehicles and then when they are out of office, they must go with their private vehicles. Yet they buy the vehicles using government money. So I would do, if I were the president, if I were in government, I would suggest that like ministers, MPs should also be given government vehicles so that when an MP of Igara East, where he hails from, is not re-elected, then that vehicle will be taken over by by his successor. Now, back to your question. You say we've been borrowing, we've not, our economy has not grown. And
No. We have grown. Our economy has grown. Even the World Bank came out and said we rebounded back quite well from COVID. But compared to other countries that are highly indebted, Uganda has not even reached the middle income status. Why is that when our debt keeps on increasing?
Thank you. Of course, when you're growing, there are stages. So we must not set our eye away from that. There are stages. It's good you say, the World Bank says we are growing. We are going towards that stage. We are not static. Because growth of an economy is not a two-day event. There are things that we must tackle. There are industries must be put to grow, the whole infrastructure, to make sure that the economic conditions favor people to work within them, earn within them, they can pay taxes within them, and then the country grows. Now, we have not reached that stage because, like we said, we have come from far. If, for example, we see Japan, one of the world's biggest economies, has debts. To reach that level, to become one of the world's greatest economies, there are some other countries that were at the level it is, but it came and surpassed those countries. Now, it means there are things that we need to do right to get to the level. The question should be, when we borrow, what do we use the money with? How hard do we work to ensure that what we borrow, we put it to the right use? Madam Fancy, we shall get to that level one time, but then it's a question of time, and it's a question of what the people in the government do to make sure that they give people good working conditions, economic conditions. Like now, you see, when there is inflation like it is now, we cannot get some fruits out of the debts that we bought from outside. Like they were talking of taxes. People cannot pay taxes within such an inflation. In my village, I went to, someday I went home. I found people have now started living a life that we live in town. I find in town we go to the market and buy a cluster of matoke. But I was surprised to find it down in the village, in Ruhumu, where I come from, down in Bushenyi. Someone, when it is lunchtime, gets his 2,000, goes to that small shop and buys a cluster. Now you expect to get mandate service debt from that person. So what the government must do is to ensure that the fiscal policy of Uganda is put right to ensure that people can work within such good conditions and production increases, the GDP increases, and then we can be able to grow and make good use of our debts, and we get out what we wish to get out of those debts.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lauben. Let me move back to Adellah. So, Adellah, Uganda's budget for 2022-2023, as we earlier mentioned, it is at 48,130.7 billion Uganda shillings. Now, that budget is going to be funded. It's already being funded, actually, because it commenced in 2022 by both borrowing and collection of taxes. On top of our debt that already stands at 73 trillion. What is your perspective on that? Uganda borrowing to fund its budget when it already has a huge outstanding debt?
Thank you, Madam Fancy. Of course, now even I may give this example. You find an MP, member of parliament, he has each and everything. He has money. But then he goes back in a bank to get a loan. That means that that person has no much money, maybe to work upon his programs, like, so he has to get a loan so that he can go on with his programs. That's the same to our country. We had to get some debts. We had to borrow some little money, because now, of course, you can't be a country. People are not, they don't want to hear that we have debts, we have other debts, so we can't borrow other money, another amounts of money. People don't want to hear that. They want to see the country moving on. They want to see what they were promised to do. Like the MPs, of course, they promise people that we are going to do your roads, we are going to build hospitals. People want to see those things happening. They want to see hospitals being constructed, over roads, everything. They don't want to know that Uganda has debts. So that's why, as a government or as a country, has to add on the debts so that the country or the citizens have got what they want. Because there is no country that doesn't want to see its people getting what they need. So I think that is, to my perspective, that is the way the government, or that's the way the government does. It has to get a debt, add on a debt to make its people get what they need.
Okay, thank you so much. Let me move to Adroit. Do you have something to add, Lauben?
Well, thank
I
you.
see a reaction.
See, when you're a parent, you have to provide for your family. You have to provide for the wife, for the children. Even when you have debts, you have a debt, you borrowed and paid fees. But now, the child is sick. Don't you have to take them to the hospital?
But Lauben, why has it been so difficult for Uganda to first finish paying its debts and then borrow? But you find every year we have got to borrow to pay a debt, to fund a budget, to continue carrying on a debt. Why has it been so hard to repay debts that we so far have?
I won't say it has been so hard, like you stress, because as we said, development is a process. When we put a hospital today, we put a regional referral hospital, like ours in Mbarara. Another part in Uganda, like in the east or in the north, they want the same service. They are all Ugandans. So what the government has done in Mbarara, it must do the same in Uguru, in anywhere else in Uganda. And therefore, even when we have not finished servicing the debt that we used to construct the regional referral hospital, we must borrow to make sure that we also give services to our fellow Ugandans in the east, or in the north, or in the western Nile, because development continues. Like I said, when you borrow to construct a house, how will you sleep in that house if you don't have a bed? So you have also to borrow to buy a bed and the mattress and the utensils that you're going to use within that house.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
to add on what he has
Yes, Sarah.
said, as a country is developing, the more you develop, the more expenditure it has. So you find if like what he has said, when now, like how the Mbara Central Market was set up, also Kabale now rose up and it wanted the what? A central market. Now Gulu will also rise up and say it also wants a
Gulu
what?
actually also has a central
has,
market.
it has.
Yes,
Yeah.
or any other district. Yeah, so the more the country develops, the more expenditure it has to get, and the more it has to borrow money to add on what it has.
But
Okay, let me come to Adroit. Let me come to Adroit.
okay.
Now, looking at Uganda's debt situation at the moment, we have external, internal, as I mentioned. external borrowing stands at 62%, according to Bank of Uganda report. Meaning Uganda majorly gets its loans from international non-government organizations like IMF, World Bank, and
The
ADB, those bodies. To add on that, we also have other, of course, there are other banks like Exim Bank of China. So what is your perspective on Uganda borrowing externally in a very, very high percent?
Me talking about that, Uganda borrowing all that amount from external banks, to my side, it's not good. Like borrowing their money, which is in paper money. I can't support that. It could be borrowing some labor, or it borrows there some machines that can help us do on our own things. We make our own things that are bought from abroad or abroad from other countries. Take for instance, I talked about these cars they give to MPs. If they could borrow those machines and we start assembling those cars in Uganda, Ugandans could be employed. Some can gain experience because they can also borrow their labor, or some people to come and first train us on how to do those things like assembling cars. So I think Uganda shouldn't be borrowing all that amount of money. Hence, there are other ways of borrowing the things like can help us and develop our country. So that's where I say Uganda should concentrate now, revise its ways of borrowing. Either they start borrowing labor and other things in case of borrowing paper money.
Okay, I can see the rest have an opinion, but we are taking a short break and we'll come back right with that discussion.
Digital rights are those human rights and legal rights that allow individuals to access, use, create and publish digital media, or to access and use computers, other electronic devices and telecommunication networks. Digital rights include a right to freedom of expression, information and communication through technology, a right to privacy and data protection, a right to credit for personal works, a right to universal and equal digital access, a right to identity, a right to anonymity, a right to be forgotten, and a right for protection of minors, among others. The state's digital rights are frequently violated through various unfair actions, for example, blockage of websites and social networks, theft of credentials, unauthorized use of people's data for personal gain, privacy intrusion, online censorship, arrests and intimidation of online users, internet blockages, and the proliferation of laws and regulations that undermine the potential of technology to drive social, economic, and political development worldwide. It is hence every citizen's responsibility to respect rights of other digital users and to speak out or report to the responsible parties when one's rights are violated.
Welcome back from that short break. We are still with students of Ankole Western University, and we are discussing the state of Uganda's public debt and whether it is sustainable. So before we took that short break, Adroit had just submitted on his perspective of Uganda's external borrowing, which stands at 62.8%. So I saw a reaction from Lauben and from Adellah. I'll start with you, Lauben.
Thank you, Madam Fancy. Now, when you're going to borrow, you borrow from someone who has more than you have. You first look at people around you. Who is a richer guy amongst us that I can go to for help? And that is why we go external borrowing. Now, should we go to Rwanda and should we choose to borrow from Rwanda?
But that would still be external.
I mean, we go to our financial institutions here. Like here, our biggest creditors are Stanbic, the Afrexim, and Standard Chartered. Now, shall we not take all the money that is there and our people suffer, our business people? Because that is where they also go to borrow from. Now, those financial institutions will like more to lend to the government than lending to us individuals who do businesses. Now, if we go to those institutions regularly, now how about our people, the business people from Chikubo down there, who go to get some money from there to do business? It means they will fail to get money. That is why I saw the Mr. Atwine, the deputy governor at the central bank, saying internal borrowing is becoming so high, and he was telling the MPs to look at it, because the central bank must also protect these business people. If they are not protected, then the country is heading for worse. And I think that is why external borrowing is too high at 62%, and it is going to be more than that in the near future, because there are projects that need to be financed and they need money. Like there's this road from Bwizubwera to Nyakashaka, then to Nyakabirizi, and now that in Buhwezu there are tea factories that are spiraling so high, that road must be made. And how is it going to be made? There's this another one that passes through Kawohe. Where are we going to get money to finance such an expenditure on that road? The Exim Bank cannot give us all that money. So we have to go external. That is it.
Okay, I also saw a reaction from Adellah.
My reaction was upon what Adroit stated. He said that in case of our country borrowing paper money, they should borrow machines. But it looks the same. Now borrowing money and borrowing machines, that is the same thing. To me, I think in case of borrowing money, borrowing machines, okay, let us also get a debt, since we have been in this state of debt. we shall still be there. And we shall still be there because we are a developing country. So that means even if we do what, we can't get out of a debt very soon. We should proceed with debt so that we can get what we want. So on the point of Adroit, to me, I need to say that we should borrow money over where we have been borrowing.
We go back to
where
back
we
there.
have been
Borrowing from.
So we borrow that money, we buy machines which will help us on a certain level, a certain extent, to produce or to provide some of the things that we have also been going to borrow outside countries or in other sections. So we better buy those machines, as he was saying that we should borrow. No, we should buy. We borrow money, then buy the machines. We shouldn't borrow all of the two things. We borrow money, we borrow machines. It is not
to the reason to why I say like we should.
I was actually about to ask you to defend.
Defend yourself.
To defend myself to the issue you are saying, like we should be borrowing paper money. I'm saying this because it's like we have been borrowing money, and this money most of the times and some of the times doesn't go to the sectors which they have been brought for. Like this money of patch development models, the money is brought from up from the office and it keeps on reducing. And this money, when it is reaching to the destination or to the people, you find like the money is a quarter. So that's the problem to why I say like they should be bringing machines. Because when machines are brought, you can't say like the machines are here, now we take this part to this, and if it's a machine and it is brought, it is a machine. So that's why I say they shouldn't be borrowing paper money.
Me, I will support Adroit.
Okay, let's Sarah support and then we go to a different angle.
Support you.
Yes.
Okay, me, I'm supporting Adroit. Like, if we borrow, not necessarily borrowing machines, but let's take an example. if we can borrow like from these already grown up or developed industries, and we bring something like people who are making an aeroplane, we borrow the necessities, all things that are required to make Ugandans be equipped with knowledge of making an aeroplane from scratch up to testing, everything that is covered, and that is borrowed. They bring it, they teach the Ugandans to a certain portion of Ugandans, and they are able to equip them with that. And they know that now, in the future, to a lesser extent, now they will not need now to borrow money for now doing that, doing what is necessified for an aeroplane. That is why I'm supporting Adroit. You look at some things like maybe if they can now bring people to make iPhones, what they now borrow that, though it will keep the debts of Uganda, but to a lesser extent in the future, it can change.
Okay, Sarah, how about this? I would like to also get your perspective on this. Project finance, a situation where, for example, Entebbe Express Highway, Uganda borrowed from the Exim Bank of China, constructed Entebbe Express Highway. We are being asked to pay.
We pay to use it.
Yes, we pay road user fees. Now the money is collected and used to pay back the loan. What is your perspective on that arrangement?
At least me, I'll support that arrangement, because something was developed, Ugandans were employed, and it is being used very well. I will support their issue.
Okay, let me move to Lauben. The question in the room, as when you look at where we are going, is the state of Uganda's public debt sustainable?
Thank you for that question. Uganda's public debt should be and is sustainable. But the question is, when we get this debt, what do we use it to do? Because how shall we sustain this debt? By developing our economy, by developing our GDP. The challenge with Uganda is, I think it is corruption. We borrow, we want to finance a very good project. We have a banana factory down in Bushenyi. It was a presidential initiative on banana what? No. Industrial something. We call it PBT. It was established some time back. I was still a young boy. Now I'm an old man, but it is still there, staggering. It is not moving. Up to today.
It is upcoming.
Now they now produce cookies. And they were like, we now turn the matoke into flour, and then we export flour to USA and the other countries, and we get money. The money used to construct that factory was borrowed. But are we getting returns? It is just there, struggling. Money was swindled. People eat a lot of money in government. So, if the government would get more serious, make sure they get these people who steal, and they are made to refund what they steal, I think we would be able to sustain these debts. But you see, we borrow to finance projects, and the projects don't yield at the end of the day, because that money that was borrowed to finance those projects was swindled. You find that the output is much less than the input. So, government must wake up. The guys must be very, very serious. And I'm telling you, if this theft is still here, we shall still have challenges financing these public debts.
Okay, let me move to Adellah. The same question. I see you already have a reaction.
Yes.
Is it sustainable?
Before I continue, I need to react on his statements. So you have said, of course, you have said these people, they are using the money that should be improving some of the projects by themselves. Now you find, and corruption has become our daily food, our daily drink, our daily everything. A leader is corrupt. We citizens, we are corrupt. So I don't know what we are all going to gain if we remain in this state of corruption. And if I go on with the question, to me, I think that our country, to get out, or not to get out, but at least to level the debts, not to a certain extent, this country should utilize what they get in a proper way. Should utilize over a little money that they get, a little, anything they get, or from borrowing it, or from their own projects, let that money be utilized in a proper way.
Okay.
That is where we will get our country continue developing in a certain level. But if we keep in this motive of borrowing, then you have borrowed that money, you haven't used that money for that thing that you are going to do. So we will continue in that situation of being a country with debts. We are not going to solve anything because we are going to remain in this state of having debts. You are getting money, you are borrowing money, you haven't used it to improve on something, as he had said, to build a project, so that project you can get outputs which benefit the country or which benefit the citizens. So that means we are going to be in that level, in that line of getting debts. We are borrowing, we are not even paying the debts, we are not even benefiting from that borrowing.
We are moving in circles.
We are just in a
Okay.
circle.
Okay, thank you
Yeah.
so much, Adela. Let me bring Adroit into the discussion. Is that debt sustainable, the one that we have?
On that point, our debt, or Uganda's debt, can be sustainable in a way like, if that money is borrowed and it is used properly to the things they bought it for, it could be better. But you find they have bought the money, they buy MPs' cars, they pay them salaries, and I don't see what we are gaining from that. I don't see where we will get that money to pay back. In case of using that money in like developing agriculture in the country, and you find after some time we are getting or earning from agriculture, and the country is collecting like good taxes, that could be helping us to sustain the debt. And another thing is like that we can sustain the debt when the money is used correctly. Like in a way, you find like they should be building good roads that could support those transporting their agriculture produces, because it's now the way, or it's now agriculture is the good thing, like can improve the country. Even we have minerals in the country. So if those minerals are got up, they can also contribute to the country's earning. We have other resources like tourism, so those can be good sources of country's income, such that it can sustain the debt it has, and we move on without debts.
And we must borrow to develop those sectors also. Because
Okay.
we have to have a starting point.
No,
Okay.
we are having
Okay,
a starting
thank
point.
you for the
already.
addition. Let me bring Sarah into that same discussion. So, in your own perspective, Sarah, is the status we have right now of Uganda's public debt sustainable?
In my own view, my answer is two-sided. To a less extent, it is sustainable, and to a larger extent, it is not sustainable. To a less extent, it is sustainable, where that the government can mitigate other obstacles or other external effects that can lead to it borrowing debts, or it can cover up some debts but still remain in a gauge of what? Of borrowing. That is to each side of less extent. Then to the larger extent, it is not sustainable, because now some ways where the government can induce to make it sustainable, like raising taxes, cutting spendings of the government, all those, to my perspective, they are hard. They are hard, or like I see it is hard for our country, because it is not cutting spendings. There's no way to raise taxes, because even the little taxes that are supposed to be paid, they are not even paid. So that is why I'm putting it to a larger extent on the sustainability.
Okay, so Lauben, probably this will be my last question to you. On the issue of a way forward, when we look at Uganda's budget, we had the budget speech, and Uganda, the minister clearly stated that Uganda is moving towards a debt reduction. You know, so how best can Uganda reduce its debt burden?
Thank you, Fancy, for that question. I think, as I said earlier, we have to make good priorities for the new dates. When we borrow, what do we do with what we borrow? That's the big and fundamental question. Otherwise, we shall keep languishing here and there, getting debts and using them in fruitless projects and the debts, and we fail to pay. So one, we must look at how are we going to use the new debts that we shall acquire. We must put them to the right use. Two, we must tackle the question of corruption. If there was no corruption, Uganda would be doing so well. They would be able to service the debts. But check, money is swindled, and my father, my siblings, my children, and my grandchildren, all of us need to pay the money that is swindled by these people. So the country must tackle the question of corruption seriously. Another point I can say, that even as we look at corruption, we must make good priorities. We need to make good priorities. The National Planning Authority, I think, is in charge of planning. Those people, those planners, must look at good priority areas where we can invest and get good returns. Borrowing to finance MPs to take flights and go to America, that they are benchmarking this and that, and even what they are benchmarking, when they come back, we don't see it, is of no use. You see, we have a lot of public expenditure. And these politicians are very interesting. The other time you saw the president was like, flights for MPs and ministers should stop. And then we use this money to do other development projects. But it is not possible. It isn't possible, because people who would effect the presidential directive are the people who want to travel, because they have interest in traveling. So if we were a very serious country, we would heed to such a presidential advice. We say, let's stop moving out, and we first develop our projects. The money that we would have spent on these flights can do some hospital here, so that when people fall sick, they go and get medicine. And when they are well, they will work. And when they work, the government will get salaries from them.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lauben. Let me push that to Adellah as well in her own perspective. So in your own perspective, Adellah, what are some of the things that the government and Uganda generally needs to do to reduce its debt burden?
Okay, thank you, Madam Fancy. The government should, I will remain on this point of utilizing its taxes. It should utilize its taxes in a way that is helping it to reduce on the debt. Secondly, the government should also look on this thing of corruption. Corruption has become the cause of all this in an extent. The leaders are corrupt, everyone, our citizens are getting corrupt. So I think corruption has become the most problem to get into the country having too much debts. And the thirdly is that we as citizens, we should also look forward to choosing the appropriate people, the real people that can make us, that can lead us somewhere, not these people who go for their own benefits. So
I see Lauben smiling.
He's a leader. So I have snitched on him somewhere, somehow. So these people are the ones who have taken our money. They are corrupt. So people, I think fancy corruption should be fought so that we can have at least somewhere away from being in this state of debts, and we go on a certain level.
Okay, thank you. We have come to the end of our discussion. I'm going to give each panelist less than a minute to give us your closing remarks, and I'll start with Adroit.
Thank you, Madam. My closing remarks will be about like where our country is going. Our country now needs to stabilize, and we fight about corruption, as Adela said, because much money is smuggled and used in such a way like it is not important. So we need to settle down. We fix each and everything, and our money starts to be used in a correct way, not being spent anyhow. Thank you.
Okay, Sarah.
To end the discussion, I'll not call it corruption, but I'll call it self-development. Yeah, they should not focus on self-development. Yeah, it should be, if you are a leader of a district, let it be Kabale development, not self-development. Yes, thank you.
Okay, Lauben.
Thank you, Madam Fancy. I want to say that the leadership of this country has a very big responsibility, because they are the ones who are showing us the way, they are leading us. Therefore, it will be absurd that we shall keep crying even when they are gone, that they left us in such a huge debt. So let them make good priorities. Let the planners of this country make good plans so that when we borrow, we spend wisely on those projects that we have borrowed for. And last, I want to thank the Centers for Constitutional Governance, the ED, Madam Sarah Vedeta, is from my place.
Okay.
And I'm happy to be here. And next time, keep inviting us. You're doing such a wonderful job, because it is from such discussions that we shape the development of a country. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Adela.
Thank you, Madam Fancy, and thanks to the CCG for sharpening us into some people, special people, because now if I can be called to NBS, whatever, I can at least air out to people.
Okay.
So to point out on this Okay, to give my remarks on this motion that we have been talking about, I think, to me, I will say again, corruption should be fought. And secondly, you leaders like Lauben should also at least okay,
That is subjective.
yes.
You stop being weird.
Our leaders that we appoint to lead us or to rob for us, they should also have that heart of robbing for their people, not for themselves. As she said, self-development. Why self-development? Let you rob for your people, then we develop the whole country. Thanks very much, Fancy.
Okay, thank you so much to our panelists. Thank you to Adroit, Sarah, Lauben, and Adellah. Thank you for gracing our invitation and send our greetings to Ankole Western University. Thank you so much to our viewers for watching. Thank you to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing the inter-university debate where university students can put their ideas and perspectives across. I would like to say thank you. See you again next time, same day.